are live. It's been a while, guys. How you doing?
Great. Yeah, nice to see you.
You as well, Mark.
In the words of the old Mike and Mike show, we're back and better than ever.
1% better, baby, every time, right?
Right? Exactly.
So,
brick by
been a
brick,
while,
my
guys.
citizen.
What'd you say?
Brick by brick, my citizens. The old Roman Empire.
Yeah, we know how that ended, right?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome into the show. If you're listening at home live, I appreciate it greatly. We're going to cover some UFL updates tonight. We haven't had a show, I think, with the Insiders in over a month, so it's good to be back. You know, last year, I felt like I was kind of beating a dead horse, so it has been good to kind of take a break and do this stuff when necessary. There has been some stuff come up, but honestly, it's not been too exciting in my opinion. We have a few highlight pieces like the UFL to NFL players, the new coaching and GM. There's a lot of things that have updated, but I mean, it's been kind of lame so far. Looking forward to some more drops soon. What are you guys thinking so far? I mean, before we get into anything, like the season's kicks back up officially March 28th, 2025. We're pretty much going with the same thing we did last year in terms of UFL scheduling, from what I'm guessing. We do have the opportunity to watch some Friday games this year also, so that'll be cool. But, I mean, guys, what's your opinion on the season startup and how you think they handled it so far?
Well, I think it's great that they announced it so quickly. I mean, we're months ahead of we were last year, so that's huge. Yep. So they're going to start selling tickets and be able to promote the teams in the markets way sooner than last year. So that's huge. That's number one on my list.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fascinating, you know, not to get too deep into it already, but with the start date, I know a lot of us wanted it closer to the Super Bowl. It's fascinating to see that they're going to do the exact same kind of time frame start date, but at least it's not all decided 3 or 4 weeks before the season started. So I think they're just really looking for that consistency this year, and you'll see that as we get through some of these new personnel changes in the league.
I don't know why they're so afraid of an earlier start date. Is it because of March Madness? Is that really the?
That's the talk of the town, but truly, I mean, what is that reason is a good question. Also, is it kind of like the preference of the kickoff, where one prefers it over the other?
Yeah, who knows? But I think the fact that they can market the league now as opposed to starting in January, that's huge. So
definitely huge. Season tickets go on sale October 15th. I'm assuming that's for every team. Last year that wasn't the case, but I believe this year everyone has their homes. We're all ready to go. I'm hoping that when they do start these season ticket deposits or actually selling them, that this is available for all the teams and not just a few select.
Yeah, I hope so.
I wonder if anything has to do with just like stadium availability. I don't know if that factors into any of it, but I know it's been a pain trying to get any kind of answer out of the Michigan Panthers if they'll be back at Ford Field, which as of this morning, it sounds like that's where it's going to be. There was an email came out to season ticket holders from last year to renew. And I know that some of them were talking about prices and stuff. So that could be a factor.
Definitely. We shall see truly what happens and when. I mean, I don't know. When do you guys think the schedule will be dropped officially?
End of October. That's only a guess.
Yeah.
So
it makes sense.
We're betting money, and don't bet that because I never win bets. So. I think that's probably the timeline that you'll see end of October, around there. That's a month away, 5 weeks away from now.
Yes, sir. I mean,
they
have announced. Go ahead.
You know what they've done, and Mike alluded to this, is if the stadiums are not set, or if they don't have those contracts set, then they delay And often they've done that before. They in the XFL did that. They delay, and then they delay the whole darn thing. So if Mike is right, and I think he is, that they probably have things set now with those stadiums. So those schedules, the actual schedules, can probably get done way earlier. Yeah, let's go for it. Get those people in San Antonio starting to plan their bus trips.
Speaking of that, I mean, why don't you drop that on the people? I mean, basically, San Antonio is going to have a home game in St. Louis. Is that correct?
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. That's kind of a nut buster, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not going to be happy about that at all.
No. I can't see anyone being happy about that in San Antonio. So I don't know.
That's a long ways to travel.
Mike G, I know you're out there. I wonder what you think of that.
Yeah.
Well, guys, in terms of I don't know. In last year, looking back at the season when we were at this point, I feel like we're at a lot more safe of a place. Last year, about this point, the rumors started really dropping about the merger, and we were all wondering what the hell was going on. So to me, I love there's a direction. It makes it so much better. It's going to be so much more enjoyable not to have to wonder.
Last year at this time, you had nothing. You didn't have one league or the other, and you thought there'd be a combined league. You didn't even know what name it was going to have. It was like basically fans had nothing, and I think the both leagues lost some interest in fans at that point in time. They kind of they were lost, and I think a lot of people gave up. But and hopefully enough people stuck around, and the last season went off. And at today's presser, when Daryl Johnson was there, he was quite positive about year two. He was year two of the UFL. He was quite into it. Like he thought this is such a huge opportunity to be going into another season. So
it kind of reminds me of my company that I work for. In 2023, they kind of announced that this is the year of compliance, getting our ducks in a row, making sure everything's tightened up. And then 2024 is the year of expansion and building up. And I kind of feel like we're in that year of compliance. Like, let's get all of our ducks in a row. Let's make sure everything's tightened up, and let's show the world that we're here to stay and we can do things right. And
Agreed.
Next year, maybe we'll get to, if it's a good year, maybe next year is finally the time we'll get our dopamine rush of expansion teams.
Agreed. I mean, from my own personal experience, I don't really hear anybody outside of the fans talking about the league. The NFL has their new kickoff, and that's been a topic of conversation in a few different circles of mine, just to explain that, hey, that was the XFL kickoff. Most people I know don't like it. And the
NFL will never call it the XFL kickoff.
I understand. And I know. We know. Just like their interviews they're doing nowadays, catching the coaches into the locker room. Those are all things that started with that league.
Yeah. One of the coolest innovations I still think is, and it started with the USFL, was the drones chasing the players around the field. And at the championship game, I had an opportunity to go and talk to the drone operators and see how they do it. And went up to the control booth and saw how that gets knitted into the broadcast. One thing I didn't know is that those drone operators, at least in St. Louis, the ones in St. Louis at the Dome, they have to have a special license to pilot a drone. And I was like, even inside a dome? And he said, yeah, for sure. And so these guys are licensed professionals to pilot those drones and provide that footage, which I think is kind of cool. I mean, and I don't think the NFL does that yet. They don't have drones yet, do they?
No.
I wonder if they're looking at that as well, because that's, you can really get some good footage easily with those drones.
Agreed. I mean, angles that a person can't stand in because there's a play coming that way. Right. So.
The drone operators are young 20-something people. I mean, and they had a whole rack of drones because they were always charging some and they were flying some. It was quite the operation they had going there.
Sounds like a sweet job.
Yeah, sign me up.
Absolutely.
I'm probably too old for that job, though. Let's say, you're too old.
Never too old to crash a drone.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have older folks in the workplace, Mark. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Hey, Chris Mason was commenting. He said, which is closer to San Antonio, TDECU or STL? And then he said,
Well, I'm sure.
TDECU is 700 miles closer.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Wow. That's hilarious.
Oh, man.
It's probably a nice straight highway, too, I bet. Pretty much.
All right. So while we're on topic, let's just go ahead and talk about the Roughnecks. We'll come back to the Memphis Showboats staff. If that's okay, guys. Just want to review, the Roughnecks are going to be back in TDECU. We knew this going into this season, or we suspected it. And it was announced September 19th, I believe. Let's pull up the article. Dun-dun. So they are back at home. I know this is going to be a big impact on these Houston fans because Rice was just not the same. It was definitely not the same. I only attended one game there in that year, last year, but I mean, it just was not the same. I can't even put it in the other words for you. But I look forward to the changes they're making here, as well as Will Lewis coming aboard and being the new GM. It's a nice face to see that's been with these Roughnecks in the past, and Gamblers for that matter. Mm-hmm. Any opinions on this, guys?
Yeah, it's nice stadium capacity, 40,000. I think there's an ability to stretch it to 60,000 for this one. And I actually love the pick of the GM for Will Lewis, and that's kind of the theme that I was talking about earlier with some stability amongst, kind of friends of the family, so to speak, of Russ Brandon, Daryl Johnston. He was helping out in the XFL. He also has some experience in the AAF. And then he has plenty of years into the NFL as an exec as well. So I think it's like just a nice solid hire for the Roughnecks to kind of stabilize that team. They just went through so much turmoil all year and, got lots of bad publicity. And I think Curtis Johnson can just focus on coaching now.
Yeah. It was quite interesting how they cleaned ranks in Houston, how they just basically dropped tons of players.
And then pick some back up.
And they did, eh?
Yeah,
that's
like
interesting.
Nolan Henderson, I believe. Yeah, they picked him back up.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't really sure why, to be honest. I mean, he was a decent player, but there's plenty of stuff to go around right now.
Well, some of those player movements that the entire league's been doing deserves some sort of explanation, but there is no explanation, and so you kind of have to roll with it, I guess, and see the way things are rolling out with all these players. So but Houston, wow, they really cleaned house, and there was some players who were not happy, and they let the world know through socials and that, and it was kind of interesting at the time.
Yeah, that did happen.
I wasn't just dreaming that.
I mean, we knew the players on that team, and I'll speak of. I won't say his name, but you knew it was going to come from him. You knew that you were going to get some drama from him. Yeah. And I won't say any names. I don't
we don't have to say any names. We'll just leave it at that, eh?
Yep. But that was expected with them. Now I'll tell you, man, when I went for the first game last year, went to the town hall or whatever they called it before the game, a couple days prior, and I sat and talked with a bunch of players and a bunch of coaches. And I'll tell you, most of that team is wasn't any sort. They were happy to be there. They definitely were excited. They were down to earth, willing to talk to all of us fans. It wasn't some of your key names that from that team, but there were a lot of athletes that. Great guys like Marvin Moody, for example. But that's how I learned who he was, learned about him. He's on who's practice squad right now? Maybe the Browns. I can't remember. We'll look at Greg's list in a minute. But yeah, that was there was a good core, solid group of guys. I'm hoping whatever kind of dysfunctional crap they have had is now gone, and they can really focus on football because Houston needs this bad.
Yeah, and they deserve it.
Definitely.
They deserve it. That's all I have to say. I was trying to expand on that, but no, that's it. They deserve it. The fans there have lost too much. They they deserve to have a winning squad and come back, especially after having their supposed championship stolen from them in the XFL 2020 championship that never happened.
Yeah,
That was
the PJ Walker era, man. That's
they
the
had
classic legend years.
They had a good
He's
thing
on your
going.
wall right now.
Oh yeah, I think about him often. And any Houston fan, especially from that era, they know that name very, very well. I promise you that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move into the Showboats new staff. Now, this comes as a surprise, and we were going to talk about this today. When I started making the notes a couple nights ago, I actually had talking point, Memphis Showboat staff ? So
Yeah.
I'm glad that they announced this in time for the show. Ken Whisenhunt named Memphis Showboats head coach, Jim Monos to serve as general manager. So I have a video I want to play, and then I'm going to have Mark talk a little bit. Mark attended the call today that these videos actually came from, so he can probably give us more insight into both of these coaches as well. Whisenhunt's got a long resume, and many NFL teams coached, college teams, head coach, offensive coordinator. I think he was like player scouting. He did a bunch of things, I believe. Monos, he was big in the XFL 22, 23 era. Before that, he spent some time with the Bills, and I believe he was director of player personnel there. But anyway, guys, with the show, I'll post the links to some of these articles, and UFL Board has a good article that I'll pull up. And I'll just check it out, because this is where the information's at. That way you don't have to chase it. But I'll include a link with the show tonight when I post it. I'll tell you what, we'll post it right now. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'm going to play a couple of these video clips, and one's just Whisenhunt talking about, what he happy to be here or whatever. And then Daryl Johnson talking about the process of getting him and just a little bit about that process and how he feels about it. So give me just a second.
To be a part of this, I have, over the years, as this has grown, one of the things I think that's been missing from what I've done for so long, which is pro football, is an ability to develop younger players, to get them ready, because it's just so hard to do that. And I've been so intrigued by how that's being done. And I really respect the way that they've done this with the UFL. And I'm excited to do that. I think we bring a lot to the table as far as giving the players the knowledge of what they need to do to get to that level and stick. But I think also, it can create a great environment for our fans. So I'm excited to be a part of this, and expecting to, work hard and have a good team, and hopefully get our fans rolling.
All right. So just a few intro words from him. He seems pretty excited. Like I said, with his background and his resume, that's a pretty good pick for Memphis. Now, I'll say, before I let you have it, Mark, he did get released from the Titans back in, I think, 2015. 3 games into the season. Had a pretty bad season. But the person that replaced him did not do well either with that team once he received it. After that, he had many years more experience in different aspects of football, but I like the experience. I like that he's there for the player build-up. He knows what the league's about, and that's what we need. Mark, what do you think about it, man? You really got to know him more.
So, yeah, everything you just said is, but one of the interesting things is Daryl Johnson compared the hiring of Ken Whisenhunt to the hiring of Mike Nolan.
I'll play that clip when you're done.
Oh, am I stealing your thunder? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead. We'll play it after.
So he compared the two. Now, Ken Whisenhunt, he offered himself to the UFL, so he wanted to be with the UFL, and he wanted that job. There was a hiring competition where they had a short list of 6 internal candidates and 6 external, and they narrowed that down to 3 and 3 to interview. So they interviewed 6 candidates, and 3 of them were internal. And Daryl Johnson was a couple things he said. He was happy that that so many internal candidates were capable. He felt they were capable of taking that job. Like they had developed enough and they interviewed well enough to have the job. Of course, Ken Whisenhunt won the job. The other thing Daryl Johnson was really ecstatic about it was the fact that there was interest in football coaches like Whisenhunt joining the UFL. Like according to Daryl Johnson, he said this is new because in the past nobody wanted to join the spring leagues. Now there's interest in some of these footballers want to join the spring leagues. Whisenhunt was very clear that he likes the idea of developing young players and he wants to learn how to do it. And he thought the UFL did it well. So in a nutshell, that's why Whisenhunt is the head coach now of Memphis. So all go Memphis. Memphis deserves a winning season. I mean, they had so much promise last year and it would all just fizzled. So,
yeah. They need something to get those fans to the games. Really?
Yeah, for sure. So
and Whisenhunt runs the West Coast offense too, so I think that would be really good for the UFL to NFL connection. Kind of already have that kind of experience. So many offenses, are in that Shanahan tree of running that West Coast offense, and he loves to spread the field vertically or horizontally, and that's something I think will be a challenge. Even just for Mike Nolan's defense for Michigan, that they've always kept things in front of them. But if you're picking them apart horizontally like that, hit guys short, I think that will really help out that Showboats offense, which really needs to get going.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I mean, that Case Cookus had the most sacks amongst anyone in the season last year. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that, let alone, I mean, that has to be fixed.
Yeah, it was bad.
No. We'll see what happens. But like I said, in my experience in visiting there, the nice setup, good staff, just got to get the fans in there, man. Got to get the fans.
Yeah, it was, Whisenhunt came across really well. One of the things he pointed out is that he's never worked with Jim Honest before. And he was asked what their plan is to build the team back. And he basically was blunt, and he says, we haven't talked about it yet. So, okay, they have work to do. And also he talked about having to hire assistant coaches and that. Well, that makes sense. So I'm assuming they have some coaches that are coming over from the last season because somebody asked, it was James Larson, I'll give him credit. He asked Daryl Johnson how Memphis had been doing these player transactions for the last couple of months, because there's been some Memphis player transactions.
Yep.
And Daryl Johnson said, well, we had to do those. We talked to the existing coaches and we decided which players we wanted to re-sign, because we needed to re-sign them so they didn't go somewhere else. So I needed to hold on to some players. And I think there was maybe 12 or 15 transactions for Memphis in the last couple months. So hopefully those ones get to stick around, because now the Monas will be there and they'll be rebuilding the team. They still have a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about it. But
yeah, I love the clarity though, because I was definitely curious on those transactions.
Yeah, we were all curious.
Decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't sleep at night thinking about that. But here's the thing. I show up, we go to a press conference with Ken Whisenhunt, and Daryl Johnson shows up. And I'm like, well, that's cool. We can ask him some questions. He was very talkative, and I wish I had asked more questions. For example, I wish I would have asked him, what happened to DeFilippo? Why did he leave? But see if he answers that question, because that's another unknown. I guess it's something you will never know, right? Unless somebody's already spilled the beans and I missed it. But why did that happen? I mean, so. And also the other question that went unanswered is, what other coaches are sticking around? Because I think it's still unclear for some head coaches whether they'll be back next year.
Yeah, definitely. That's as far as I know, everybody's up in the air right now, correct? I mean, this is our official coach for the Showboats, but I mean, otherwise,
Well, I guess Mike Nolan's back. I don't know if I've seen confirmation of that, but the way that Gerald Johnson was talking about him today, yeah, I guess he's back. I don't know. Maybe I missed out on some things. Maybe I've been sleeping. But
mysteries of the UFL, you never know.
Well, the UFL and XFL previously, they were always notoriously close-lipped. Like they didn't want to tell you anything. And the fans wanted to know this and that, and they wouldn't tell you squat. Wouldn't even tell you what stadium they're playing in, for God's sakes, even though the rumor mill had already spit out the stadium, So hopefully Darryl Johnson will be a little bit more out there talking about his league this year.
Quickly before I get Greg on, so on Jim Monos, do you know anything about him specifically, either one of you? I mean, I did a little bit of research before the show, and but I mean, he's been pretty quiet the past couple of years after the.
Bring Greg on here and he'll tell us.
Oh yeah, he's ready. He's waiting. Get him down there waiting.
He knows.
Well, I do know that he was on the Saints when they won the Super Bowl. He was a part of that personnel department. I know he did some work for the Bills, and part of that theme I was getting across, he was also with the AAF, and did some work in the XFL as well. So just kind of a theme of just like people, that they can trust to kind of, get things stabilized.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go to the comments real quick. You got all kinds of comments going on. So this is an interesting one from Chris Mason. Chris said Zach Potter should be head coach for Houston. I mean, many feel that way amongst the Twitterverse. That's for sure.
Good old Chris.
Bring it.
Hopefully he can find a spot amongst some of the staff, because I know the man does deserve it. William Burton. I really hope the marketing is way better than last year. Still see people that don't even know Stallions exist. Yep, I agree with that.
Wow.
3 times champions, and they don't know about him, eh? That says something.
It's a sad world, my friends. Gotti Ram, go Brahmas, go.
I know that Birmingham Mayor didn't even acknowledge them until like close to the championship game.
Really?
All the fans were trying to get his attention. Hey, put some publicity out there, and finally, before the championship games, when he finally acknowledged them, put out a short video.
I said, vote him out. He's gone.
Right.
UFL fans will vote him out.
From the places I've been, they have the best and most legitimate setup, in my opinion. You go to a lot of other places, and it's kind of I mean, you are where you're allowed, and you get to do what you can do. But there, they have a whole nother set of rules. So heads up to any media that head there. It's a little more strict there in terms of everything.
Yeah, they're. Can I say anal on your podcast?
Oh, say anal. Talk about it. I don't care.
They're very uptight about things, it seems, in that market.
Yes, sir. Let's see. I'm going to try to answer a couple more comments before we get Greg on. Okay, we can skip those. Oh, well, let's do this one. Abdul Mimon. Did I say that right, Abdul? There's been a lot of job postings since the end of the championship game to now, so hopefully they can make an impact once they get hired to when the season begins. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. That's a tough one, because you're always hiring new staff. I mean, that doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. And I have the video from Darryl Johnson talking. I'm going to play this video. It's about a minute long, and then we'll pull Greg into the show. So we'll be right back, guys. Check out this video real quick.
A phone call from somebody you've had the opportunity to work with as a broadcaster for a number of years, and looked forward to the production meetings. You could tell about his passion of the game, the success he had, at each stop he was at. So when Ken called, I was very, very excited and hopeful that he was calling in regards to the Memphis opening. So when he let me know that it was something that he would love the opportunity to compete for and to be a part of the UFL moving forward, because everything he just said, there is, and we walk this fine line on this point all the time. We are a standalone professional football league, but we understand the developmental component that we can provide for our players, and it has gotten more in need in today's game than at any point.
All right, so wrap that up. Just some short and sweet words from the man.
Very chatty today, he was.
Yeah, I watched some of that, but I couldn't get it all in. I didn't have enough time. Let's pull Greg in. Greg has done a great job keeping up with the UFL to NFL signings, tracking them. I'm going to pull up the doc that he has been working on. Now, I'll tell you, I do have a link. I'll post it in the comments. This doc is public, so if you click the link, you can view it in Google Docs. Okay, everybody? So just a heads up. Greg, welcome in, man. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Hey, Greg.
Hi.
Greg.
So I appreciate you greatly for the information on this, the tracker, as well as just coming in last minute. Always good to have you on, an expert in this field, no doubt. So, Greg, I mean, I'm going to pull it up and kind of break it down for us. What are we looking at so far with the UFL to NFL players this season?
First, I do want to say Jim Monis. You said I probably know what he's been up to. Strangely enough, I do. He's actually been Tyler Dunn, who has covered the Buffalo Bills and Green Bay Packers and wrote for Bleacher Report. He's got a podcast. He's got a Substack, golongtd.com. And Jim Monis has been his co-host on a weekly podcast there that I've listened to quite a bit. Mostly because of Jim's affiliation with the XFL in 2022 and 2023. That apparently did not carry over to the UFL. When you're merging the USFL and XFL, you can't have everybody come over. So Jim apparently did not come over to the UFL for season 1. So it's great to see him get a job as general manager of the Memphis Showboats. He was number 2 in Buffalo for a long time under Doug Whaley, who we know is very high up in the personnel department, league personnel department with the UFL. So connections there, obviously, with Russ Brandon as well, the CEO, president, whatever you want to call him, of the UFL. So connections galore there, in addition to his work in the XFL, in addition to his work in the AAF. So yeah, I'm excited. I've gotten to learn quite a bit about Jim's past as he was a scout with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was in the front office with the New Orleans Saints. And I think Moose talked about on the conference call today about talking to Mickey Loomis about Jim, the former New Orleans Saints general manager, Mickey Loomis, and or is he still the GM there? He might still be the GM. About Jim's time there and everything. And so, his philosophy on things is when he looks at a team, and I'll just real quick, and then I'll move on. But he looks at, to have a successful franchise, you need to have the ownership, the general manager, the head coach, and the quarterback all aligned. They need to be all healthy. They need to be all working in concert with each other. That is how you determine a successful franchise. And right now, if you look at Memphis, ownership is league ownership. So I guess your mileage may vary on the stability of that. You've got a brand new head coach who has a Super Bowl ring in Ken Whisenhunt. You've got a brand new GM, first-time GM in Jim Monis, who has a Super Bowl ring as a front office guy with the New Orleans Saints, and the quarterback is yet to be determined. So that's the one to watch. He's also talked about he has a way of scouting quarterbacks. He has his own system that he created to scout quarterbacks. So that's going to be really interesting to see where they go with the quarterbacks for those reasons. And obviously the quarterback, most important player on the team, period. But just knowing where Jim Monis sees the quarterback in the hierarchy of the success of a team, and just knowing that he has his own system of grading quarterbacks, and it'll be interesting to see who he brings in. But I digress. Let's talk UFL to NFL.
Hey, I appreciate the info, Greg. Even pertaining to this list or not, yesterday when I really started to get on the grind for this to see who was where and if there was a legitimate place where someone has been keeping up with it, I could not find one online. I looked at every tracker that there was. There was a Fox one, there was an ESPN one, there was a UFL one, and they all.
And there's the Greg Parks one. That's the one you want to. That's the one you count on.
Best and most accurate, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I appreciate this, Greg. Seriously, this is some good information. Guys, I posted the link. I'll have it in the show notes as well. You can check it out on your own time. I'm not going to read every single player, but he breaks it down into the three men that made it to a 53-man roster, the players on the practice squad, as well as players that just signed from the prior season of the UFL. So check that out.
And that's actually slightly out of date already. I sent it to you last night, Matthew, but there's been transactions today that have affected this list. Nehemiah Shelton, Los Angeles Chargers, cut off the practice squad. So -1 for the practice squads right now. But I mean, this is a list that can and will change almost daily throughout the NFL season. And I try to keep updated when I post my articles each week. And I know a lot of people track who cover the UFL. They track how UFL players play in the NFL season weekly, just as I do. But I feel like I go a little more in depth. I look at not only the UFL players like Jalen Redmond and Dondre Tillman and Jake Bates, but I'll look at the XFL and the USFL, the legacy USFL and XFL, as Moose Johnston likes to call them. I'll go back and look at them, and I'll tell you how they did. I'll tell you all the transactions that involved these players during the week. I'll tell you all the tryouts that these players had during the week. So there may not be one concrete list that's updated constantly online, but if you follow my articles on UFLboard.com, each week that I post the weekly wrap up of how players did, I also post the transactions that these players were involved in, the tryouts that these players had during that week as well.
Understood. I mean, how hard is that to keep up with this? Are you checking this every day, Greg?
Yes, I have a problem. And so I am very much a completist. So I need to have all the information I can possibly gather. And, it helps me do my job. When I cover the league, you never know what information you need to go back and look at. I could be writing a story next spring about a player. And if it's a new player to the UFL, I want to be able to go back and say, okay, what was his NFL experience? Who did he sign with? What tryouts did he have? Like, what experience is he coming to the UFL with? So I like to have all that stuff on hand. And so it is a lot of work. But it's very satisfying, I think. And so that's why I do it.
Hey, you do a good job as always, Greg. I trust your knowledge more than anyone else amongst the internet.
Thank you.
Sure. And guys, if you're not familiar with Greg, which you should be by now, my lord, check out UFLboard.com. That's where he writes, as well as Mark. Mark runs the show, but they're all a big, great team there, and they do some good work. So check that out. Had to plug y'all. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's always welcome.
So in terms of the three guys that are on a roster right now playing, let's get some opinions, guys. I mean, I know Mike Bell's probably got some opinions. I know. Greg, I mean, let's start with you. What do you think so far about these three men that are on the squad?
Yeah, it was Jake Bates and Jalen Redmond who made the teams out of training camp. And then Dondre Tillman was just signed to the active roster this week. Denver had to put Baron Browning on injured reserve, so they needed a outside linebacker edge rusher. So they brought Tillman up, and I mean, Tillman had 2 sacks in the game against Tampa Bay, looked very good. Jalen Redmond was inactive the first 2 weeks of the season. He ended up playing in week 3. He got a sack in sort of garbage time there at the end of the game. So really good week 3 for these guys. Jake Bates really hasn't been challenged that much. He's hit a couple field goals, short field goals. He hasn't really gotten to show off the leg. He did miss an extra point this past weekend, which, the accuracy and the erratic nature that comes with the territory with Jake Bates. I think you just kind of hope that they don't come in inopportune times. You keep him because of the leg and his ability to hit those 50, 60 yard field goals, which Dan Campbell has actually passed on a couple long field goals from Bates, which is interesting because you would think that that's kind of why you kept him, is for those opportunities. So he's done well. So a good start to the season, I would say. As the season goes on, as players get injured on 53-man rosters, you're going to see players who are now on the practice squad end up getting opportunities. You get 2 elevations per week from these teams of guys that they can bring up from the practice squad for a game, and then they go back to the practice squad after the game. So you'll see some UFL players get opportunities there as well. So it's always exciting. You watch them for the UFL season, you watch every game, you watch every play they're involved in, and then boom, here they are in the NFL, and you're kind of like a proud papa. You knew them when, and so it's always really cool to see them have success at the NFL level. And I totally understand Moose talking on the conference call today about walking that line between being a developmental league, but also being a league that can stand on its own 2 feet and doesn't necessarily need the support from the NFL. And I think it's tough as a talking point because you want to market yourself as a place where players can go and then take that next step. And you love hearing, as a fan, I love hearing these announcers say, hey, Dondre Tillman got a sack, played for the UFL Birmingham Stallions in 2024. Like, that's cool. And I think it does give the league some legitimacy. But on the other hand, you don't want to make it seem like your results don't matter, that you're just exhibition games so that these players get playing time to move on to the NFL. You want to be a place where if, for example, Mike Rose, who's been in the last 2 training camps, hasn't made rosters, been on the St. Louis Battlehawks for 2 years, if he never gets signed by the NFL again, he can make a good living in the UFL playing football until he decides to hang up the cleats. So there is that struggle about how do you brand yourself? How do you market yourself? Even how do you talk about the league in these press conference settings? Like, what do you emphasize? What do you put out first about the league? So, I know that I'm brought on here to talk about this, and I'm happy to talk about it. But I think if the league wants to be seen as something more than that, their marketing has to reflect that. It has to be, yeah, these guys can go on to the NFL, but geez, have you seen the atmosphere at a St. Louis home game? Have you been part of the Beer Snake in DC? Like, those are the things that you really want to make stand apart from any other sporting event or any other entertainment event that fans could be spending their hard-earned money or time on.
Agreed. Any other points, guys?
That was perfectly said, Greg, as usual. I would just like to touch on just like a nice week from the players we do have in the NFL. It was really cool to see some graphics this week of seeing Rookie of the Week and DeAndre Tillman being a part of that conversation, and me just getting to do like a double take, like, wait, what? Oh, cool. That's awesome. It was awesome to see Jalen Redmond get his first sack against the Texans, and Jake Bates. I feel like this went exactly as I predicted. He's very much using him the same way Mike Nolan did. It just so happened that the Panthers games were so much closer that when Mike Nolan needed that long field goal at the end of the game or at the end of the second half, we got that opportunity. And I think that's just what hasn't happened for him yet. He's only going to get those opportunities at the end of a first half and probably a game winner type situation where they don't need a touchdown. Other than that, his longest field goal is 35 yards. And I do find it fascinating they missed that extra point. Obviously, no one's perfect and everybody kind of misses one. Justin Tucker's struggling right now. But when I watched him last season, every single halftime, he was practicing. He didn't go into the locker room. He was practicing NFL length extra points. I think that's always been a concern. These closer distances for him have been more of a challenge than the longer kicks, ironically. So I thought that was interesting.
He's got the leg, guys.
Yeah, that is kind of ironic. You wonder, is it mental? I mean, you kind of have to wonder about that because he's got the leg, as Matthew said. I was kind of surprised, as Greg's alluded to, that Gerald Johnson did talk about that idea that the UFL was successful in providing players, but then they lose those players too. And so, I mean, I think that's been touched upon before. Like, so, okay, great. So PJ Walker got to go to the NFL, but then he'll never play in Houston again. I mean, Houston fans are like, whoa, come on. But that's another story. Now, Greg has alluded to this, and he's written some articles on UFL Board about this and about the players that are not in an NFL roster right now. and they're good players. And when will the UFL draft them? And I'm not sure about that. Plus, there's 2 more showcases, right?
Yes, sir.
And there's a heck of a lot of players that are ratcheting through those showcases. Will they ever get a chance to hit the UFL field? I mean, I know Greg doesn't know the answers to this, but these are questions that I often wonder about.
From looking on the website, the showcases are sold out too.
Yeah.
Full capacity. All showcases sold out. No walk-ups permitted at UFL showcases. So you have to join a wait list now.
That's interesting because a lot of the earlier showcases did not sell out ahead of time, and they did allow walk-ups. So I don't know if it's just the fact that these 2 showcases in particular have had a lot more time to get people to sign up because the other showcases were during the summer, or if, whatever the case is, it is interesting that these are the 2 that have sold out of the ones that they've run this year.
Yep. And that's Houston, July 28th. I'm sorry. Got that way wrong. Sorry, guys. Orlando, September 29th. That's the next one. And then following that, San Diego, October 20th.
I think it's fascinating. I get a handful of requests on Twitter. Hey, can you connect me to the UFL?
Yeah.
And I've actually reached out to some agents that I know that are with current UFL players. And I'm like, hey, how can I help these guys? Do you have access to the GMs? And they said, the absolute best way is to get to these showcases. And we talked about this in the summer. Direct them straight to that showcase. That's where they're going to get their tape seen. That's where they're going to get in front of the right people. And it sounded like that they're really going to take those showcases seriously. And I did hear, at least from one of my favorite players from last season, he actually got cut. And I was like, what's your plans? Are you going to try again? And he was aiming for the San Diego one way back in June. So a lot of it was distance for some of these guys that I had talked to.
Yeah, well, hopefully he got his name on the San Diego list then, because I guess it's sold out, right?
Yep. When we talked about this, I had Bryce and Eileen on, and they weren't sold out at that point, and that was early August. So this had to just happen the past month.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of players found out they didn't have a job, so now they're scrambling to get noticed and get themselves on a UFL roster, right?
True. You had a lot of leagues in too. A lot of the different spring type leagues, the arena, the IFL, LFA, all that is over. So I guess that gives people more time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had a ton of signings. I know Todd Simmons, who attended a couple showcases this summer, he signed with the Arlington Renegades. That's the only signing that I know for sure came out of the UFL showcases. It doesn't seem like they're going to have a combine like they had last year with the XFL. So a lot of these guys are kind of on their own. It doesn't sound like, we don't know anything about another draft coming up. There are players being signed right now. In fact, one player signed today, according to UFL Communications. Offensive lineman who went to camp with the New York Jets and was cut at the end of August. So, it doesn't seem like they're holding off on signing those guys for a draft later on this fall, which is kind of always the rumored time to have another draft. So it may just be, sign guys at will.
Makes sense. But I know from last year, and you guys can vouch or tell me if I'm wrong, but many of the athletes last year, they didn't even hear back from the ones I knew, at least, that participated in some of these events. Some of them, they got some film, which was great, but others, they never heard anything back from attending these showcases.
Mm-hmm. Last year was a scramble, right? So last year was a complete scramble, and it was XFL, USFL, then it was UFL at the last minute. So this is the first year that the UFL has a chance to standardize their recruiting process and do it right. They have the time to do that. So I'm hoping they do some things right this year that they might not have been able to have the time to do right in the previous year.
Hopefully we get an opportunity to watch some of this as well. I know last year we had the YouTube special that they did with some of the showcases. It was last, June, July, I can't remember. But It was nice.
I think that was during the combine, and
that what
they
that
don't
was?
seem to be doing a
yeah.
combine this year.
Mhm.
So
That was
Mhm.
awesome, man.
I wouldn't bet on it.
That
It was
that's
cool. It was cool. Yeah.
something to give people, that they can hold on to, and that's kind of what I feel like we need, just some filler content.
Mm-hmm.
That's really why I haven't done a show, though, is because it's like I don't want to get on here and just talk about nonsense for an hour every week.
There hasn't been much to talk about, unfortunately.
No.
This was kind of the critical time that I think people were looking at and saying, okay, now that you've gotten through this season, you had the short lead up, everybody kind of forgave league ownership and leadership for not doing all that we felt they needed to do to sell the product, whether it was marketing nationally, whether it was marketing in the cities. And we said, okay, once you get to the first full off season, this is where you got to show me something. And I don't think they've really shown much. They do seem to have the tickets sales a little bit more in order. So season tickets renewals are out there. I think new season tickets are going to be going on sale soon. By the sounds of it, a schedule should be coming maybe next month. And if that comes out, then hopefully individual tickets are not that far behind. So, they're on a decent pace, I would say. But there's just not a lot of other news out there to kind of fill those gaps.
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, they springed a pretty big headline when they said UFL will be on Friday nights on Fox for 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so that goes out. Oh yeah, okay. Well, what else you got?
Mhm.
I know.
Well, we had the drop last week, but it was last week, right? The announcement ended up not being much. I mean, I don't know, guys. After all these years, I've kind of learned that if they're teasing on some news, it's probably not anything game changing.
Yeah, I know people were hoping for a full schedule drop, but we didn't
Yep.
get anything like that. But look, I mean, Friday nights are going to be interesting because I'm tracking the ratings for college football on Fridays because SmackDown has left Fox. They moved back to the USA Network, so that Friday night time slot is going to be college football in the fall, college basketball in the winter, and then the UFL will take over in the spring. And so I'm just trying to see where the ratings are going to kind of get an expectation. And this past week's rating was over 4 million people for this college football game. So the expectations are going to be pretty high, I think, for what the UFL does, or there's going to be a pretty significant drop off because I think their championship game did 1.6 million, and you've got a week 4 college football game pulling in 4 million people. So, the UFL's 1 million is going to look like peanuts compared to college football and college basketball on that night.
Greg,
And
do
we
you know
also
what
have-
the
Go
SmackDown
ahead.
numbers were for before they ended?
They were around, I think, 2 million, some give or
Okay.
take a couple 100,000. And they always drew really good 18 to 49. They were always number 1 for the night or number 2 for the night there, but they were usually last in total viewers. But it's prestige, and college football is going to get better ad rates for Fox than professional wrestling was able to get. So that's even if the ratings were equal, Fox wins out because they're getting better ad rates for it.
Understood. Had a question from XFL Mike G. He said, how many spots at each tryout? I don't know. Greg, are you familiar? No, there's a lot.
I would say they're probably pushing 200 at some of these.
Yeah, agreed, or more. 'Cause
I
that's-
read
I'm
250
talking.
somewhere. I don't have a site, but
No worries.
Yeah, it may all depend. I think the first year they did it, they capped it at 100, and I don't know if they figured we can get. I don't know what the money split is here, but it's not cheap to try out these
Mm-mm.
things. So
no.
The UFL could be making bank on this stuff if they're getting 250 players at whatever it is a pop, whatever their split is with American National Combines that run these. I'm sure they get their beaks wet on this as well, but I'm sure the UFL is walking away with a pretty penny on this, and no promises. They don't have to sign any guys. They don't have to. I mean, I don't want it to sound like a scam or anything like that, but they should be pulling in some good money on these things.
I think it's 250 is what it was, or close, something like that from previous years and looking this year when it first opened. And then I think me and you talked about this, Greg, on the show as well, that they return that money if you're drafted. Is that correct? Or if you're signed, they'll actually give the player that money back. I'm not sure the exact wording there. I don't know if it's signed or drafted.
I know the XFL had that. I'm not sure. I would assume that's still the case for the UFL, but I'm not really sure if they make a roster but it was also the NFL Alumni Academy was something like that too. Like if you made a roster, they would refund the money you spent on being in the NFL Alumni Academy. So I don't know if I'm getting those two confused with each other or if they both had that related. I don't know. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there was some kind of deal where, if you made a team, there was some monetary exchange there. I
think that was a different landscape too, because like with the NFL Alumni Academy, the XFL they went into bed with them. Why? Because they wanted to get they wanted to lock in players over the USFL, and they were competing with the USFL, which was ridiculous in many ways when you look back at it. But that's why they did these crazy things, in my opinion, is because they wanted to get the players over the USFL. They were competing with each other, knocking each other out for this. And of course, that's not anymore.
We're all together, holding hands.
Yeah, it's all a big part.
Until the season starts, anyway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All I see already is Birmingham on the 4-peat. I've seen that on Twitter a lot.
No.
Somebody commented
I don't know. The
earlier.
Michigan Panthers, they're returning a lot of their core. And I know there was a couple people that were talking on Twitter about there's a bad taste left in their mouth. They felt like they could have won that game, and they're coming back for it. So I thought it was neat to see a lot of the core starting to come back. Missing some key players like Kai Nakua, you're missing Frank Ginder, you're missing Breland Speaks, but some of the core players are being re-signed. I think they're motivated, and that's cool to see in this league. Get that kind of rivalry going.
Yeah, get that. That's exactly what the league needs. It needs way more of that and continue.
They got Bryce Perkins back. I think he should be their starter. I mean, I thought he played really well. I know he came in late in the season, but I think if he had played that playoff game against Birmingham, I think he would have given them a better shot to win that game.
That's right. I remember you saying that, Greg. You wrote an article. Did you write an article about that?
Yeah, because
I didn't listen to you.
I said I would not have played him in week 10.
Yep.
Right.
Because week 10 was against Birmingham, and my thought was don't give Birmingham the opportunity to
figure him out,
defend him and figure him out. And what do? They play him and he gets hurt.
Yeah.
And then he's not available in that last game. And I was like, well, I mean, that's another reason not to play him. But
Greg is he has a crystal ball there or something. He's like,
don't give me too much credit. I don't want too much credit.
Hey, that's what happens when you're a middle school teacher, though. You got to be on point.
Wait, eyes in the back of your head for one.
Yeah, that's true.
You got to be on point. I've been there before, Greg. I know you're checking everything. So
you got to. Nothing gets by you.
Your subject was it history? Is that correct?
I teach civics. Yeah.
So yeah, you know a lot. You're keeping up with a lot of different fact and data. That's cool, man. I wish you were my teacher when I was a kid. I'll say that. We had talked so much football.
Maybe get some work done in there, but maybe not. Who knows?
Well, guys, that about wraps it up. Did y'all have anything else you wanted to discuss before we all hop off?
No, I really appreciate you inviting me to the show. And if you hadn't invited me to this show, I would be watching this show because there's some interesting people on this panel. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the conversation from all y'all. Everybody's got their own input and data, Greg. So appreciate you as well. Greg, I contacted you last minute and you really hooked me up with that info. So thank you. Guys, like I said, I'll post all the information in the show notes after this is posted everywhere. So it'll probably be later tonight. So regardless, xflboard.com, check them out. Check out Greg on Twitter, Mike on Twitter, and Mark on Twitter as well. Mark, I know you got a personal Twitter. You don't ever want me throwing that out there, right? You just want me throwing the UFL board. Is that correct?
I don't mind. My personal Twitter, I don't do much football talking on there. Yeah, you can throw that out. It's 4 Mark Nelson with the number 4 and then Mark Nelson.
I'll add it to the list. No worries.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Give you your spotlight, man.
Tell me what you think of Canada, because that's where I live. Tell me what you think of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, because that's who I follow up here.
Gotcha. I mean, I'll tell you what, I have disconnected from football besides now that the NFL's kicked back up.
Yeah.
I'm a Saints fan for my whole life, basically. And they got me back in with the 2 weeks of just beast play. And then I started them in fantasy and they decided to do nothing. So
they almost had it. They were in the lead late.
No comment. No comment. But guys, I appreciate each and every one of you. I don't know when we'll hop on again, but I'll definitely, you always got the invite. If you need something, reach out and I'll do the same.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. It's good to see everybody. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Mike, good to talk to you. This is my first time talking to you. I know I've seen you on social media. It's good to hear from you. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a fanboy of you too. I appreciate how you represent the space, and it's always great information. Honestly, I would be lost without your UFL to NFL tracker, so thank you. Awesome.
Yeah,
thank you, Mike.
Welcome, Mike. Yeah.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. And until next time, I mean, we'll see you then, guys. Take care. All right. So I'm going to close it out. Appreciate them again. Great show. It's good to be back talking. I've missed the podcast, but like we said, we didn't really want to hit a dead horse. We don't want to beat something until there's nothing left to talk about. So just taking it easy, man. Waiting for the season to start up, and we'll get there soon. So just stay steady, guys. Enjoy NFL while you can. I know some people aren't a fan. That's okay. You don't have to be a fan either. You like what you like, and that's kind of like what we do here is you keep up with what you like, and that's what I like about everything. It's been a pleasure. I don't know when we'll have another show. As always, I'll announce it on social media. I want to try to do some interviews in between, but really, I mean, I've just been kind of focusing on myself and gearing up towards this next season. AFN in general, I've kind of stepped back, trying to come up with a plan to get things in order. There's a lot of different groups out there, and I just felt like we were all kind of swimming in the same pool. So, good to separate and just do what I can do best, and that's what we do. So, appreciate the guys coming on tonight. Special thanks, as always, to UFL Board, Mark Nelson and the gang. Fabulous. Appreciate the guys with AFN, Mike Bell coming on tonight. Mike's a great guy. He's been on the show a few times, and you can look forward to seeing him again as well. Find him on Twitter or AFN, alternativefootballnetwork.com. Haven't been doing too much with the site either. Kind of trying to get a plan of action going for this next season. So that's really what I've been focused on. And hopefully we can just bring you guys some good information and discussion. And that's kind of what I'm all about at this point. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you for watching the whole show. If you watched, thank you, UFL, for letting me cover the league. Appreciate it greatly. Take no ownership over any of your products. I just like to discuss it, talk about it, and get that information out there. Look forward to more drops from the UFL. Hopefully they hit soon, and we can see what's going on with the schedule, coaches, and even players in the long run. Appreciate you again for watching. I am Matthew Tyler, and that is it for me, guys. Till next time, peace out.
Go hard, go home, go home, go hard, go hard, go home, go hard, go hard, go home, go hard, go hard, go home. Touchdown like an end zone. When the circle turn to my home, can't get me out of my zone. Go hard, go hard, go home, go hard, go home.